If you look back throughout history, cooking was always something that was passed down from generation to generation, within communities, within families, and it really wasn't until recently, maybe the last century or so, with the explosion of restaurants, that chefs started taking on a lot of that weight. They were the ones cooking for their local communities, which meant they were also the ones passing down a lot of knowledge. But being a chef and being a home cook are two very different things. So I brought over really my only chef friend that I have. So this is Eric, and I met Eric about 10 years ago when he was working at 11 Madison Park. Where do you work now, Eric?
Well, I've been cooking professionally for the last 12 to 14 years, and it's been quite the evolution. I've the last 6 years been the executive chef and managing partner at a Compagnie des Vins Naturels. So a wine bar and restaurant in Soho, Manhattan.
So Eric makes a banging gnocchi dish at his restaurant, and I thought I would make a gnocchi dish as well that's hopefully decent. And along that journey, we're gonna be pointing out the major differences between a top chef, like this guy right here, and a pro home cook, like this guy right here. So tell me what goes into planning a menu for a restaurant, which is obviously different from being a home cook.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm cooking for myself at home or for a loved one, it's really about what's in the fridge, and actually I get super excited about that, and I call it cheftovers. Like, how can you make something from nothing, seemingly? And that's a fun thing, but it has to be a little more conceived when we're planning for the restaurant, obviously. So for me, it's dictated first and foremost, bench line, always by seasonality. We do not cook with things that are not in season. We do not use tomatoes in the winter. They're garbage. We do not use spring garlic in the fall. It's spring garlic. Of course, we take a nod from the people that inspire us, or eating out in different parts of New York City or beyond. So it's really this kind of conglomeration of years of cooking, eating, traveling, sharing, tasting, and that is really what defines the other element of how my menus are conceived. So today we're going to be making Parisian gnocchi, which is like a different version of gnocchi, not based on potato, but actually on a French dough. And that's served with spring garlic, roasted wild mushrooms, and pea shoots.
Now, every home cook is gonna have their own unique identity in the kitchen. Just like Eric, the food that I'm cooking at home is gonna be inspired by my past experiences. But the biggest difference with menu planning for a home cook is that we just have to cook for our family, maybe our friends. We don't have critics, we don't have customers that are paying us money. So as long as the people you're cooking for aren't picky, you can make whatever you want. So for me, I generally have staple dishes, my go-tos throughout the week, that I'll just alter with the ingredients that I have on hand. Now, speaking of pickiness, I do have a new member of my family that's just starting to warm up to vegetables. But one thing she loves is sweet potatoes. So I thought for my gnocchi dish, rather than use just regular old potatoes, I could sub in sweet potatoes, which I always have around now because I'm making them all the time for her. Oh yeah, and like many toddlers, she likes anything covered in cheese. So I'm gonna make a sweet potato gnocchi dish with a bacon creamy cheese sauce that both my wife and I are gonna enjoy, but also, hopefully, my daughter will enjoy. So how important is consistency when it comes to your restaurant?
I mean, consistency ultimately is everything. As far as I'm concerned, I go to a restaurant for a very specific experience, and I go back to that place essentially because I want the same experience. If you have a gnocchi that's soft one day and not as soft the next, probably gonna be a little disappointed because your expectations were not managed. So I think consistency and managing people's expectations, providing that same high level of enthusiasm, quality of product, selection, and hospitality is everything. People come back to a restaurant because of consistency. So for our Parisian gnocchi dough, it's a very specific recipe. Everything has to be weighed. We use a scale for everything at the restaurant. There's no real eyeballing it when it comes to these types of recipes. First, we put on a pot of water to poach the gnocchi, and we're actually tying a piece of twine on top so that we can cut them into the shape that we want without using a knife, and they won't stick. After that, we want to weigh out all of our ingredients super consistently, and in this case, it's extra imperative. We weighed out our bread flour, our eggs, our salt. So I got a medium-sized sauce pot on a medium heat. Melted butter into milk till it was just about boiling. And then we slowly added the flour and used a spatula to mix it in. Yeah, we just want to work out those little pockets of residual flour. The butter is preventing it from sticking on the sides. You want to see it just kind of form its own beautiful ball that's pulling away. And that's a good sign of Frisian gnocchi batter. So then we brought the dough from the sauce pot, added it into the mixer with the paddle attachment. First added in the salt, and then we added one by one the eggs until it all comes together. So once this dough comes together, we're gonna put it right into a pastry bag. We'll tie the top and we'll start poaching our gnocchi. Yeah, they want to float to the top, and then I wait about like 30 seconds and that all floats to the top. Obviously the ones that dropped first are gonna be a little more, slightly more cooked. It's all good.
Now this might be the biggest difference between a home cook and a chef. I don't need my food to be consistent because I don't have paying customers. I don't have people expecting the same results. And I get that. When you go to a restaurant, you want that. But in my house, as long as the food tastes good and I'm making people happy, that's all that matters. So my food is never consistent. It's just not my style. Every single dish is slightly different, which brings us to these sweet potato gnocchis. I'm not gonna be weighing out specific ingredients. I'm just trying to make a bunch of gnocchis so I can have a great meal plus leftovers. So I'm first gonna roast 2 medium-sized sweet potatoes. So I'll throw those on a tray with tin foil, pop them in a 450-degree Fahrenheit oven, and roast them for 45 minutes until they're just falling off the bone tender. Now I'll peel off the skin and I'll salt the sweet potato just to draw out a little preliminary moisture because sweet potatoes are super high moisture content compared to regular potatoes. And then once they've cooled down a little bit, I'll add those to a bowl, crack in 2 eggs, and I'll start with 2 cups of flour and just mix that together until it forms a very rough dough. Then I'll flour my surface and I'll just start gently kneading that dough. And like I said, sweet potatoes have a lot of moisture in them, so it can be a little bit sticky, but anytime you get some stickiness, just a little bit of flour to avoid that mess. But you don't want to add too much flour or these things will get very dense. Trust me on that one from experience. And then once your dough has come together, I'll chop it in a few pieces, roll them into thin logs, and just start chopping up gnocchis. Now you can design your gnocchi however you want, but in the case of a quick dinner, these are just sitting here on the counter for probably 15 minutes while I make my sauce, and then I'll just pop them in the water as is.
Mise en place in French means everything in its place. It's the single most important aspect of cooking in any kitchen, whether it's at home or in a professional kitchen. Obviously, there's less margin for error in professional kitchen when there's like dozens of tickets coming in. So this is leek stock, and we used leeks in another dish on our menu. This was the byproduct, the tops of the leeks that we didn't necessarily have a use for, and we're gonna make profit from it by using it as the base for our sauce here. For the mushrooms, we have oyster mushrooms, and this is called maitake mushrooms or hen of the woods. They're both from Rhode Island, which is semi-local for mushrooms, and we just pulled them apart into the shape we wanted. And this beautiful green garlic, it's the young garlic before it's fully formed, and you can eat the entire thing. As the season goes on, this starts to get super tough on the inside. So now is the time to be able to utilize green garlic in all of its form. So we're gonna saute the mushrooms beforehand, so we have our complete mise en place, and then we're gonna infuse them with these green garlic tops to provide like another aromatic quality in a different way, and so we could be totally ready for service. So now that we have everything in its place, I'm guaranteed for a streamlined pickup or execution of the dish without having to worry about falling behind.
Now, when I started cooking, mise en place was very foreign to my kitchen. There was no prep at all. It was like turn the heat on and go. Now, over the years, I've gotten better at prepping, and it will definitely make your cooking more efficient, probably a little better, definitely more consistent. But for me as a home cook, I don't need that consistency. But what I do need is to put food on the table sometimes in 15 or 30 minutes. So there's a lot of time management going on. So in this case, I'm starting my sauce off by rendering some bacon. So I just chop that in some pieces, threw that in a pan. Now that's rendering away. So that gives me a few minutes to chop my aromatics. I have some onion that I'm gonna dice up, a few cloves of garlic. So when that bacon is now rendered off, I'll take that out, keep in that bacon fat, and start sauteing down those aromatics. So I'm not completely prepped out before I start cooking something, but I am saving a little time. So I just want to take a minute to tell you about today's sponsor, which is Mizen, a kitchen tool company that's really just trying to enable and inspire great cooking. And they do this by offering incredibly high quality products for really affordable prices. Now, if you've seen that blue handle in any of my videos, you know it's a Mizen knife. And this knife has become my go-to workhorse in the kitchen because it's super high quality, so it's gonna stay sharp for a while. I don't need to constantly sharpen this knife. And it falls somewhere between a heavier German style knife and a lighter Japanese style knife. And I'm so happy Mizen just found that middle ground because it's really just an all-purpose blade in the kitchen. So if you're just getting into cooking and you're looking to upgrade your knife game, or maybe you're a chef like Eric and you work in professional kitchens, the Mizen chef's knife is a great knife for any situation. And if you click the link below and use code word ProHomeCooks, you can get 20% off your first order. Now back to the video. So everything is prepped. Now you have to execute. How does that look in your restaurant?
Everyone in my small, intimate kitchen should know how to make this dish and have it come out tasting exactly the same. Everything is set up for success for when that ticket comes in, when that order comes in. It's meant to be that anyone in the kitchen can execute it the same way with the things that we have in place. Okay, so everything was prepped. We got a pan ripping hot, good amount of olive oil, threw in the gnocchis. They get nice color, they start to steam inside, puff up, then we throw in the aromatic raw spring garlic, so it's like giving its flavor and perfuming, and then we throw in the mushrooms that are already cooked, so we don't need to waste any time doing that during service. And then we deglaze with the leek stock, we mount it with butter, we emulsify it, we season it with lemon, salt, adjust, taste, and adjust again, so that we know when it goes out, it's gonna be spot on. Just finishing with a little, grated cheese, olive oil, some pea shoots, some nasturtium flour, and just like bringing it to life at that point.
Now, if you're a chef like Eric, you've prepped out everything, you've probably tested this dish hundreds of times, you're ready to deliver and execute that final product. For me, my cooking at home looks a lot different. It's sort of a never-ending experimentation, whereas I'm constantly learning when I'm making a dish, and I always have the possibility of screwing something up, which happens a lot. That's how I learn. So for this gnocchi, I've made a similar sauce a few times, but that doesn't mean I can't make some dramatic adjustments in the moment if I'm feeling it. So those onions and garlic have been caramelizing on a medium-low heat. They're looking really nice. So what I'm gonna do is spoon in about 2 tablespoons of flour and start toasting that in all of that delicious bacon grease, creating a bacon fat roux and toasting that flour just like Eric did to remove that rawness and create an extra layer of flavor. Now, once the flour's been toasted, I'll just hit that with a splash of white wine to sort of lighten things up with a potentially heavier cream sauce. Now, once the alcohol has cooked off and it's reduced, I'll start adding in some type of dairy product. In this case, I had some milk, but you can use cream. And I'll just slowly emulsify that in so there's no lumps until it starts getting really nice and creamy. Now, once you have your bechamel type sauce, you gotta add some cheese. So I grated in some manchego and also some Parmesan, but use whatever you have in your fridge. Then I hit it with some spring peas that I had frozen. And once that was looking really nice, it's time for those additions. So my sauce is finished, but I do want to add one more ingredient. Really simple. I've got some kale right here. You can use any leafy green. I've got my water boiling for my pasta. This is a great little technique. You just blanch it. It only needs maybe 20 to 30 seconds. Boom, boom, boom. Slice, 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 slice. A great way to incorporate more veggies into a sauce. And you can see this is thickening up a lot, but I'll be able to use some of this water to thin it out. Now we've got our gnocchis. I'll load them up on here since they're pretty delicate. Fit 2 more batches. All right, and when those float to the top, we're good to go. All right, that took about 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes. We got floaters into the pasti, into the saucy. Can't forget that. Almost forgot that actually. I'll do one more batch of gnocchi and I think that'll be the perfect portion. One thing that I would struggle with is repetition. That's something I always struggle with. I think that's part of the reason why I'm not a chef. Obviously, you know, this is a staple dish for you in the season. You change it at some point, but how do you deal with repetition? Is that something you enjoy?
Generally, being a chef is about the same thing over and over again.
That's why I'm not a chef.
While no day is completely ever the same. So there's a weird juxtaposition there. There's every day is a new challenge with totally different variables, but then again, your goal is to mitigate as many variables as possible. So at the end of the day, no matter what kind of shit show is going on behind the scenes, that thing is coming to that person's mouth exactly the same way as they had it the last time.
The food is
the cooking's the easy part, man.
It's the whole other shebang.
It's
and
the beauty of managing people. Yeah. It's the guest relationships, the rapport, the hospitality, and all of the little things along the road in the day that try to derail you, and you just have to be committed to pushing through till the end of service and making as many people as happy as possible.